Glenn, happy to be here in Singapore. Thank you for the walk through the botany gardens. It's been pretty fantastic.
It's a bit warm, huh?
A little bit warm. It's a little bit rehydration necessary. We're here doing a demo on Wednesday with the overall Ayra Card story. You and I have been working a fair bit. You've leaned in pretty hard. We're finding Ayra Card, the story itself is simplifying so many things, but you've really jumped in, investing a fair bit of time. Obviously, your resources you're using are expensive, they're focused. What's driving that? What's driving the investment and energy?
No, it's a good question. I think, if you look back at the history of SSI, it's easy with rose-colored glasses to look at what's worked and what hasn't worked. And actually, I'd say in some ways, the industry has been too focused on the issuance of credentials, not the reuse of those credentials. And so therefore, we're really passionate, interested in anything that can drive not just issuance of new sets of credentials, but actually the usability of them downstream.
Right.
And that's what Ayra Cards does for us. I think it's a really clear articulation that, particularly, the first time you proposed it was in the context of a corporation having it as a digital business card, but actually to unlock benefits for their staff for things like, at the coffee shop or getting a discount. And when you think about that, I've worked for massive, big global corporations. And one of the barriers, they had all these employee benefits. It was just too hard to access them because I had to remember.
You didn't use them.
I didn't use them because I had to, get a letter or have some proof or take my employment badge with me. I didn't have anything on the phone that I could just show and, be as easy as a QR or NFC type tap as you go through it. So I think the problem is real. I think the technology is at a point where the solution is real. You just have to bring the two together and drive it together. And I think, the part that you're fulfilling at Ayra with the membership community is you've got members who are both on the technology provider side like us who are, look, we can build this stuff, but you've also got companies that have the credentials who are saying, look, how do we get some form of utility out of it?
Right. And that comes into one of the things we were talking as we walked a little bit was walled gardens, in that even inside of companies, the large companies have areas that can't share information between for legal reasons, or that's just how things happen. The idea behind the business card is it is intentionally about sharing information across a barrier. Are you finding groups you're working with are focused in on their own walled garden problem? Are they trying to protect everything, or are they opening?
I'm laughing because they often start with, we want to be open.
Yep.
And then when they realize what that really means, pretty quickly they go back to defending, I didn't mean I wanted you to share.
Or you to access.
Yeah. So I still think there's a big education journey for companies on it. But again, I think this is where Ayra Cards come in. Start with things that actually are fairly low value in the scheme of things. Getting a discount at the coffee shop should be relatively risk-free.
Low value, low consequence.
Yeah, low consequence, low risk. Right. So I like that as a concept. And I generally believe that the first step as an industry have to do is actually go after the low value, low risk, low consequence data. But when people start to realize, hang on a second, that just works really easily. I'm getting higher adoption of that because the friction of the user experience has disappeared, which is resulting in a better customer experience. And, the clear case that comes from me is just KYC. KYC is just, I can't believe how shocking it still is. It's still paper-based. I know, if you move countries, you still end up kind of, fraudulently somebody's filling out because I can't get my phone number until I get a bank account. I can't get a bank account until I get a phone number, and I can't rent a place until I get a bank account. You've got this three-way problem. So what do? You just make a fake letter saying I've got a place to unlock that process. So I think that what Ayra Cards will be is actually a really important next step in the evolution. And if we get that user experience right and get the concept of, payloads where I as an individual get to choose what I want to collect and aggregate those together, because that's the difference. I think if there's one question that I get asked, even by my own team, is what's the difference between the Ayra Card and a traditional verified credential or verified relationship credentials that are coming in through first person project. Ayra cards are an aggregation of lots of other data into one payload or one digital credential. And that's the power of it, actually, is that I get to choose what goes into that, how I present that in a safe way, versus the very fundamental lower level building blocks, which are really important and Ayra Card will use.
Yep.
But I don't want to have to go through and think, to do this, I've got to present 8 different verifiable credentials.
Yep. I
just present my one Ayra Card, and the Ayra Card and the introduction will say, okay, here's the 8 bits of information in the Ayra Card that you need to share.
Right. The reason we're using the business card as the analogy is that's how a business card works, right? It's a small amount of information. You hand it to someone. We don't know when we created the card where that's going to be used, where it's going to go. The relationship and what we want to do together determines that. And I can't presuppose you're going to need this ultimate credential because we don't know where we're going. We don't know if we should go.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's one of the things.
And I think that's what breaks you out of the walled garden is, walled gardens dictate to you, this is what you can do with, here's the information set you have.
Yep.
And you can't change it. You can't do anything with it. But when you start to have a more flexible system where I can choose what other data I want to augment myself with, I'm going to bring my education credentials into it. I'm going to bring other memberships into that and my professional credentials. And I can start to mix and match those together.
Yep.
I think that is a huge amount of innovation that can be unlocked just from that very simple premise.
Did your team find it a little too trivial at first?
I won't lie. I think there was a little bit of pushback from people where they were like, isn't this just a VC? Is this really needed? And I think those types of questions are always good, actually. I always encourage people, be open, ask those questions. But I think the part that people really miss, if you really distill it down, what is really the one first difference of an Ayra card to the other types of credential? It's the aggregation capability. And I think it's very hard for people to put a value on what that aggregation is because we're still dealing with issuance of onesies and twosies, and we treat each credential as if it's completely standalone, completely isolated because it's stuck in an isolated walled garden. And that's, again, why Ayra Card, to me, as an aggregator, it'll break across those boundaries. And I'm sure it will show a whole set of new problems we have to solve. Yeah. But that's an important next step.
Well, those will be new opportunities as well.
Yeah.
You mentioned a couple of things already. One is we've had some of our members, you included, are some of the most sophisticated ecosystem thinkers, understanding that opening up an ecosystem is important. But even they have gone to say, I have an ecosystem that's profitable, key. Yeah. I'm like, great. What does it mean to open it? They're like, well, they don't know where to go.
No.
This is an approach where we tend to do at the beginning of Ayra, when it was began, talked about connecting ecosystems, which we've learned is a great concept. It's not meaningful. I don't know what connect means. I don't know what ecosystem means. Put the two words together. But what we've learned is the idea of me carrying as a business card, as an Ayra card, the information, the payload that you need. It's an integration, simple integration. Right. We don't have examples of doing the credential thing because the point-to-point integrations are so expensive that the only ones they ever do are the priority 10 out of 10. Mm-hmm. If it's priority 9.8 out of 10, it doesn't get done. So we don't have working examples of it using an old school approach, which is pushing us to one of the things that Ayra Cards has done. One is we pushed to do a demo. That was part of you pushing to do this demo we're doing Wednesday, which is also pushing us to have groups who want to do proof of concept and operational pilots, which is the first time for Ayra that we've had that member push, that we're being pulled in to do this, which to me is a signal. It's fantastic. We're looking at these proofs of concepts to say, what are the business processes that are going to change, and where is the new business value created? Where are you thinking that the business value and business processes will be changing?
I think the business process and the business value, I think initially will come from more complex multinational businesses that, to your earlier point, they're multinational. They have many business units operating in the same country without replicating in every country that they are playing in. And because of the laws and the regulations they're into, they may not even have things that you take for granted, like a single staff repository. I don't know who my staff are.
Yeah.
I don't know who's visiting an office. I don't know what department they may be representing. Are they allowed in this system? Things like access management, even still in 2025, is still very difficult to do, particularly when you start crossing boundaries. And then if you actually start mixing that into, kind of more modern businesses that may even take that the next step further by actually saying, look, I have third parties. Also,
I have no staff.
Yeah, I have no staff. I have, almost gig economy style. I've got people coming in and out. I think this is where Ayra Cards will unlock a lot of value, because for the first time, I don't have to have a really complex global system for the coffee shop to give you a 10% discount. All I actually do is I flip it around the other way and just say, look, if you have an Ayra Card that has some form of statement or attestation from me as the company, and you pass that verification, congratulations, you get a 10% discount. I don't care how you got it. As long as it came from me, which is, again, where the signing comes into place, I've shifted the problem completely around. And I think that really starts to unlock a lot of simplification.
Yep.
And when you get simplification, that's another word for user experience. And then you'll start having people, again, start saying, well, why can't I use it for this? Why can't I do that? And I think, a lot of this is based on the belief and faith, to be honest, that this will be a better customer experience. And humans, anything that's simpler and easier tends to win. And if we can get rid of paper-based systems, trying to find that email from 4 years ago when I was hired as proof of, so I just no, it's just a QR code.
Yep.
You negotiate. What is it you want from me? I will then just get a consent popping up saying, okay, they're asking for proof of employment and they're asking for my insurance number. You're a coffee shop. Why do you want my insurance number? No.
Yeah.
I think that is just a very easy, quick, fast experience that will bring a lot of value.
But then take a similar one. So if I go to check in, for example, I was talking to the guy actually last time I was flying here from a major consultancy. They get absolutely ridiculous discounts at hotels.
Yeah.
Like the 1,000 euros a night is 200. So I mean, it's a valuable thing to say, I work at this consultancy.
I'm not saying, but I have some staff that may.
Well, we have another different consultancy reached out to one of our guys saying, yeah, just use my code. We're like, well, I don't. He goes, here's a template to create your own business card. It's like the amount of, but how do you at the hotel desk challenge me without pissing me off?
That.
If you have annoyed me as a customer, I'll probably still just do the discount code at the same hotel. So this becomes a really easy way to say, do you really work for that consultancy and are you eligible for that discount?
Yep. No, even just simple things, visiting the office and just knowing, should you unlock the door or not? I mean, I've been working for so many companies, which is, often visiting that first office, I'd waste 15, 20, 30 minutes at the front desk with all the other line of staff. Can you activate my card, please?
Well, you and I, in our back history, we didn't know each other, but you and I both have a lot of history working with the military industrial complex. The amount of time spent on visit clearance requests.
Exactly.
Oh my God. It was, yeah.
And by the way, I don't know what they're actually checking half the time, but they've got their process. They're running through the process.
It was easier for me as a Canadian to enter a U.S. facility than it was for my employee who was a dual Canadian-U.S. citizen because they couldn't talk to our privacy officer and ask for his social security number. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
But that term covers daily use as well, because I only go to a hotel. Unfortunately, we travel a lot, both of us, but that's still not a daily use. But the tapping in at the office,
all the time.
Tapping for getting a discount for my card, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, but I mean, you can see going further, you see, and there's a great thing in society, public spaces, you see simple things like the electronic defibrillators, right? All over the place. But in some places, they've got what if you could have more advanced first aid gear? But it was as simple as you could unlock it if you could show a credential. I'm a first responder, first aspect. And I think this is where the concept of Ayra Cards over time can really just expand to things. Or, picking up rubbish. What if I put rubbish in certain bins? I can scan a QR code and I get social points for doing things or earn discounts.
There's one of those wherever we came in.
There's one back
for actually dropping off laptops and stuff. I saw that. Yeah, you actually get points.
Correct. So, use my Ayra card as a form of identification and collect those things. Again, it just becomes, we all carry our phone all the time as you go through this. It's just very easy to do.
So you, I know, are really interested in agentic AI and what agents mean for us as individuals, for companies. Most of our members are being pulled into that space. Where do you think the Ayra Card story helps in the agentic AI world, or are you looking? Do you need something wildly different?
No, so I'm a big believer that humans and AI agents should be using exactly the same systems, processes, and standards. I do not think that there is actually any difference between a human and an AI agent. Now, that doesn't mean that an AI agent can do everything a human do. Just like you and I, we are both human, but we both have very different access rights. You know, I don't have access to your bank accounts. I don't have access to Canadian social services, just like you don't have access to Australian social services. So even though that we use all the same systems, we interact with the internet, we interact with systems exactly the same way, we're not the same.
Right.
And that's how I view AI, is that AI should get identity in the same way a human does. I think they should get a birth certificate. I think they should have passports. I think they should have similar, you know, they won't be exactly the same, but they should have all the same kind of artifacts that gives them rights and capabilities to interact in the world. What I get worried about when I hear other technologists say we need to create a different internet for AI, because the moment you do that, now you've created another walled garden. You now have a walled garden for humans and you have a walled garden for AI.
Right.
And the humans will not be able to understand what's happening in the AI world, and the AI world will be restricted to what it can do in the human world. Really what we want is just like, I want to know, am I talking to the real Darrell? What happens when someone constantly is saying, oh, Darrell from Ayra, can you pay your membership fee? Is that really?
Here's our new account information.
Oh, by the way, can you pay it in cryptocurrency to this? Is that really you, Darrell?
Yeah.
I just want the same for my AI agent, right? All I really care about is if you're saying you're human, I want to know you're human. If you're saying you're AI, just be AI. What I don't like, AI pretending to be human or human pretending to be AI. So I think it's one of the same. So in that model, AI should have Ayra cards, and they would be presenting their Ayra card to unlock whatever access or benefits or systems of value that they need to have access to, just like the humans would.
Right. I look at I'm looking forward to the time when we have an Ayra card that I can tap, and our agent can basically say, yeah, we need to book an appointment or something. Just take care of it. It just becomes a lot easier. But yeah, you mentioned something there. Do you read William Gibson at all?
Yeah.
So you're talking about the AI getting a passport. I was thinking about the AI what became Winter Neuromancer, and the other where they had Swiss citizenship. That was it's an interesting concept that came out of, my God, the 80s. He was writing that, but thinking about this kind of thing.
I think, AI, birth certificate's the easiest one to understand. Humans, we get a birth certificate. And the birth certificate really is your record of existence and where you came in, at what time, and kind of what parentage you have. AI actually needs exactly the same thing, right? It's an AI agent deployed in this data center in Singapore by, I don't know, Anthropic or Amazon.
Operating under this framework.
With this version. On this hardware for this customer domain. That's its birth certificate. By the way, it gives it no rights. It just says, though, it's globally unique and it's an attestation that it's at least been provisioned by company X in location Y.
Right.
Now, as you start giving it credentials saying, okay, now I can look up in a trust registry, that is a real AI agent that's been provisioned. I can see that. I'm now going to give it credentials in my company saying you're now able to access the employment systems for background verification and help screening of resumes, for example. That's kind of like a passport to itself. And it should collect that and hold it itself. And then as it talks to other systems, it says, why are you accessing the recruitment system? Oh, here you go. Here's my proof that I have reason to be accessing it as you go through this.
I like your passport example. Alexandre from the CEO of Glyph. When we first started talking about Ayra cards, I literally, as you've seen me do many times, pulled a card out. His analogy was, Glyph is very rigorous organizational identity. They're more of a passport level. With both richer, but very, very focused, fit for purpose, different levels of encryption, different levels of access for different folks versus the simple business card, which is about starting the conversation.
That's right.
Yeah,
it's all about augmentation is really what you, and again, it's where the Ayra card comes in. It's an aggregation. It's an aggregation of lots of different data sets and payloads into a single container. That's actually probably the right way for it, is a verifiable container of different sets of data. And there's the sum of that will be more valuable than the individual components on their own.
And that's how we do things in the analog world. When we build relations with people, we slowly bring in our past.
Yeah.
We bring in information. The same thing. We don't want to just blam.
Yeah.
Here's all of it right now. Here's me. When we first meet, I don't hand you a 20-page stack of docs.
Here's my resume. Here's my performance reviews from the last 10 years.
Yeah. But speaking of the past, though, you've come out of an interesting realm. Your history, just two data points. You were involved in the early days of UUNet, which was, I think, the largest backbone provider and overall.
Yep.
It was the biggest customer. AOL was its customer.
Correct.
But also Amazon Web Services. So when you're operating at truly global internet, oh my God scale, like bigger than telco scale.
Yeah.
Where do you see this fitting in? Do you see all of these technologies, the connections we create, the credentials we help move, operating at that level?
I do. I come from a hyperscaler background. We start measuring things at millions of transactions per second. Not per minute, not per hour, not per day, but per second. That's where you have to kind of set the benchmark. And I'll be honest with you, 2 years ago, one of the proof points in Affinidi I wanted to prove was, with all this added encryption, because you start talking about DIDs and verifiable credentials, you're dealing with a lot of encryption keys. You're dealing with, signing, authentication, encryption.
The compute behind that.
And then you've got envelope encryption. So let's do that like 3 times. And then I've got routing, and now I've got to do with 2 sets, because obviously if you and I are chatting, I've got my set of credentials, I've got your set of credentials, everything I've got to validate. What's the performance cost of that? And so that's actually what kickstarted a big investment into messaging, asynchronous, decentralized messaging. And, we really like what DIDCOM does there. Again, not perfect, but it's the best that is out there that is natively integrated with DIDs.
Right.
And so one of the things we aimed for was actually looking at WhatsApp, which, infamously one of the data points for it is it'll handle around 15 million messages a second as, kind of peak. So could you get to 15 million messages? What would it cost to do that?
Right.
And, bringing that production hyperscale coding architecture to how to do this, and, starting to think about like production scale DID resolvers, distributed caching systems, very advanced cryptographic aspects, and to the point where we're very, very opinionated on the types of crypto that should be supported and what shouldn't be, because it's too slow. It's not that, and it's also too insecure. We don't support RSA. It's too slow and it's not secure enough. So the good news is, to cut that short, is that you can get better, as good, if not better performance. Because what you're doing, and I think, again, as an industry, we're not doing a good enough job of talking about this, is you're pushing a lot of the validation to the edge of the network. Whereas when you're not using this technology, you're centralizing it into the center of the network. And the problem with that is, one, I have to have trust channels all the way into the center, which gives opportunity for bad data to come in. Versus when it's on the edge, I can use way more compute power. Your phone, your wearable devices, your laptop has huge amounts of compute power. But then I'm also able to kind of make decisions on the edge and then re-encrypt it and pass it to the next hop closer and closer to the center as you go through. So it is, I think, fundamentally more efficient. But the problem is it requires a very big quantum shift in how you think about the architecture. And, my experience of, driving cloud adoption a long time ago when it was new, that was the hard part. Even when people knew, I get it, infrastructure as code is the new normal, but getting to think that way and, provisioning and auto scaling, it took a decade.
We haven't built the muscles. We just don't even know what the muscles are.
We haven't built the stories, to be honest. And, if you really want to be vocally self-critical as an industry, we haven't demonstrated the proof point yet. I'll be really honest. I totally agree. We've been able to say, here's the slam dunk reason why you cannot escape this.
That's one of the reasons we created, back in the beginning, GAN, now Ayra, was the founders, the ones who were driving it for it. I got brought in as an independent. They were frustrated that the tech was sufficiently scalable. but it wasn't suddenly being deployed.
Yeah.
It's a combination of the focus has been, what's the business case that's actually necessary, and then the first business case, especially to drive the scale, which is why I like something as simple as Ayra Cards, the business card, but the governance and the tech, because they tried the tech, they pushed the tech, but even when you see it, the demonstration works. If you're a business, you don't even have the muscles to understand what you just saw.
Correct.
You're thinking it's a centralized server. Well, I can build me one of those, and it's not the same skill set.
Yeah.
So
if only it was that easy.
Yeah. The intersection though of AI, of connection and comms, and then both you and I consistently talk about both. That's critical. And to me, the trusted ecosystems. When I say ecosystems, I don't mean supply chain. I mean these nano, tiny, almost one credential, one ecosystem type of thing. Seems to me to be where the energy, certainly where we're focused. Where do you think is that appropriate?
I think so. I think, if I was to look into a crystal ball, I'm a big believer that the future is made up of these tiny little trust networks. And the smallest of those trust networks is myself.
Yep.
Right? What are my devices? What is around me? Then the next trust circle will be my family.
Yep.
My partner, my child, that ecosystem. And then the next trust circle around that will be what's my social circle, my professional circle, my different hobbies as I go through this. So 8 billion people in the world.
Yep.
Quite likely that we all are part of at least 3 or 4 trust communities, at least. I mean, you're talking 30 billion trust communities.
Yep.
And, this is where integration now comes into play. And, where I look at some of the technologies coming out, which will be trust registries are key. Yep. And I think every individual will be running a trust. You might not realize you're running a trust registry, but you really are.
Yeah.
And then those trust registries will be registry of registries. So they get aggregated up. And I think the easiest one to always understand is, take Singapore. Singapore government will have a trust registry for Singapore, but each ministry within Singapore will run an independent trust registry, one for Ministry of Health, one for Ministry of Education, Ministry of Defense. But they are under the Singapore one, and within the education one, there's going to be childcare, primary school, high school, higher education, professional education. So you can just see how this just becomes a whole tree structure.
AI education.
AI education. I can't wait for AI that fails. But so you have this whole concept, this whole trust regime. So then what you start to create is a trust graph. How do I navigate across these? And this is really where, again, our partnership with Ayra, why we invested in this relationship and leaning in is because we like to look around corners. We like to say, okay, trust registries are literally here. TRQP 2.0, it's here. You're seeing the first implementations coming in, which is great. Ayra Cards will be one of the first, kind of demo use cases of that.
That hard requires it.
And it requires it as you go through this. Linux Foundation leaning in on some of this as well. What's the next order of problems that come with this? Yeah. And I think that's really where Ayra as a community, all of us, we have to come together and just talk about it. And, I can promise you it's going to solve some problems and it's going to create a whole bunch of new problems. And we have to be able to have that openness to talk about the good, the bad, and there's going to be some ugly things where you're like, oh, crap. But that's innovation. That is actually the thing of innovation. I think one of the things we have to be very careful about is aiming for perfection on the first go. Is Ayra Card going to be usable for every single use case that someone wants? No. And that is okay.
Yep.
It is okay. What is it not doing? And let's go and understand that and then see, is that something that could be augmented in the future, or is that going to be a new standard that sits alongside it?
Yeah, or does the standard move to, one of the things that when Drummond wrote the special network effects paper.
Correct. Yeah.
Something at the global level likely has to be simple because it's global.
Yeah.
But industry specific may get a lot more detailed. You may get very, very detailed at a lower. But the patterns of how do I use the thing? How do I carry in the card?
Yep.
That I am now the point of integration at the hotel, the hospital, the education, the conference, meeting you at a dinner table. That the pattern should be similar. Yep. But if I'm working in a very particular industry, what I'm carrying might be wildly different.
Correct. Yeah. And I think this is again, the simpler the building blocks. Again, if I look at my experience, why did the internet take off? IP, TCP is pretty damn basic, right?
Yeah.
It's all the complex protocols, video streaming, social media, interactive, low latency. It's all built on the same underlying set of protocols. We didn't go out and invent 13 different protocols.
Well, at one point there was.
At one point there was, but it didn't scale, right?
Yep.
It didn't scale.
Yep.
It was really, TCP IP, Vint Cerf that, kind of brought that to life. And, again, Amazon in the early days of clouds, right? They had a very simple API that you could use for S3 for just storing
I was one
objects.
of the early users of S3.
Yeah, right. And so simplicity wins.
Yep.
And I think, again, if we take just a tough look at some of the standards that we try to use, they are not simple.
They're fairly complex.
They're fairly complex, and they're trying to be, a jack of all trades, but master of none.
Yeah.
And so, again, my personal mission at the moment as I work with, Ayra, First Person Project, and some of the standards bodies is actually going back to first principles about what is the simplest representation of a singular use case, make that really simple, and then make it stackable.
Yeah.
So you'll see this with Ayra cards, right? Ayra cards are actually pretty simple because I actually were relying on underlying technology to do some of the more complex aspects instead of trying to either bring Ayra cards down into those and make them complex or bring them up into Ayra card and make Ayra card like really low level detail. Ayra card is going to be pretty simple. Like, show me what you've got.
Totally. You mentioned two things there. One is you like to look around corners.
No.
One of the questions I have for you is the Ayra Card protocol, the initiative we're working on. You're investing in it. You're leaning in. There's a cost to doing that, to being a first mover. There's also a cost to waiting.
Yes.
How do you balance those two? Any advice for others?
Any advice? It's a bit of a gamble sometimes.
Yeah.
But look, the one thing I'd say is there's two things I've learned in my career. One is you have to be in the race to win it. If you are not in the race, it's pretty simple that. Second is when it comes to infrastructure, you have to lead with the lowest level of the infrastructure stack first. And, the best example of this, I think, was actually we saw in the last decade would be 5G networks, right? It took years of the industry talking about telco should build a 5G network. Well, why would we build a 5G network? There's no 5G devices.
Yeah.
The device guys would say, well, we're not going to build a 5G device because there's no 5G network and there's no 5G app.
Yep.
Software developers wouldn't build a 5G app because there's no 5G devices to build up. And literally, this was a stalemate for years. And by the way, building a 5G network, billions of dollars. So
in every country.
Right, in every single country by all the major telco operators. What broke the camel's back there was the telcos eventually realized, now hang on a second, we're the lowest level. If you don't build the road, you don't build the highway, nothing can run on top of it.
Yep.
And so again, when I look at what Affinidi has to build, this is why we go back to first principles, and it's things like, okay, you need DID management, VC lifecycle, DIDCOM for messaging, that'll expand to trust spanning protocol and trust tasks in the future. But you need to build all those things, even though there's actually no one driving on the roads yet.
Yep.
But what that allows is us now, when Ayra comes along, and actually Ayra is using some DID technology, VC technology, messaging technology, presentation technology, trust registries. Actually, only took a couple of weeks to pull it all together and show that it's working. But in those couple of weeks, it's got all the security.
Yep.
It's got all the performance capabilities. It's standards based. That's the benefit you get as you go through it. So, what I would say to others is just think about where are you in that stack. If you believe you're at that infrastructure layer, you got to be building. But if you're wanting to build the applications on top, then find the road builders and go make friends with them because we want to build.
Yep. And that's also part of the story of Ayra Cards that we like is that it shows on the commercial side, we really have three kinds of members: tech stack infrastructure providers, systems integrators. Both of those are supporting the end user customers who have the business problems that are going to either save money, make money.
Yep.
They're looking for each other.
Yes.
Which was really, and Ayra Card is like, hey, I want to build one of those. I want to try something lightweight. your point on one of the things we were looking for the demo, and as we get into the proofs of concept and pilot projects, one of the rules we have is it really needs to be out of box capability. We don't want to develop net new. We're not hey, let's go try something new. It's like, no, let's take what's there, configure it, deploy it. I'm happy to hear it was only a couple of weeks because you are first in, right? You were graceful enough to host me when I was back here to figure out around the corner those things that we hadn't quite figured out. And thank you.
There's some tough discussions.
But it's what's necessary. But then we also had, we're going to, Mattia from Northern Block. Yeah. They're doing trust registries, adding TRQP now that it's out. It was an afternoon of work. So we're not talking like a huge lift.
They're not big lifts. And I'd say, even though Affinidi's leaning in, a couple things. One, a lot of our software, it's all open source.
Yep.
So, others out there, please feel free, try it out. But we actually want to encourage others to co-build.
Yeah.
Right. And so, Northern Block having trust registries, checked using trust registries, many others. It has to be all of us doing it together. It cannot be just one person.
Well, that's one of the ground rules when I came out was awesome, you're leading in, throwing heavy resources at it, but we have to make sure that on every piece of the puzzle, we have to be able to say any member in that area can fit. And that's what's been absolutely immensely helpful.
Yeah. So for the record, there's nothing proprietary in Ayra Cards.
You also mentioned just a couple of times, we mentioned first-person project.
Yeah.
First-person project in many ways came out of Ayra. I mean, the ideas were out there. Dan and Ayra were created. We produced a paper back in January when we launched in Davos that talked about the first-person credentials, for what the needs are for this thing, and then it has kind of moved sideways. We're kind of like, I would say, not necessarily siblings, but cousins. We have many members and folks who are interested in Ayra looking at it and saying, "Are you first-person project?" No, we're not, but we're close to it. You're touching both. How are you keeping that separate in both your head, which I'm sure you could probably do very easily, but also with your team? Because there's what seems to be overlap, but keeping them separate is really, really kind of important, and knowing where they fit.
Look, I actually think they're very complementary to each other. Ayra for us is very clear. It's registry of registries. It really is about, what are the trusted lists or registries of data that can be presented in a cryptographic, provable way. And again, because we look around corners, to us it is clear. A trust registry for a walled garden is not needed. But a trust registry for an open garden that allows another garden to work, that's really where the Ayra, kind of technologies and services come into place. Ayra Card, again, we view as an aggregator. So it's a higher level aggregation with an app that is all about the user experience of presenting this. So I think it's actually very different to first person project, where first person project is really looking at the definition of what's a trust community itself, what's a verifiable relationship between one or more entities, what does it mean to have a personhood credential. So they're looking at schema. So I'd say they're actually a little lower down in the stack, with future plans to grow into things such as trust graphs, personal network managers and others. But I think when they get there, Ayra will have already set some of the standards, and actually the two will just continue to be in lockstep as you go through it. So I think it's good to be aware of both. I think it's okay if you blur the lines on the outside, because again, they're all using open technologies. VRCs and PHCs, they'd just be payloads within an Ayra card. So if you choose to start with a VRC PHC approach and not Ayra card, it's okay. You can bring in an Ayra card at any point. Or if you start with Ayra cards and at some point want to break out PHCs or VRCs.
The other hack is most Ayra cards are both.
They are both.
The fact that my company gave me a business card, guess what? That's I have a relationship with the company, and I am a person.
So I would just suggest don't get too hung up on, it's not as technologists, sometimes we get into religious battles of what it is. I think they're very complementary. I think you're both solving different dimensions, actually, of a much bigger puzzle, and both are required to come together. And, I know you and Drummond talking to each other. Do you have to agree on every step? No. Just like every member of Ayra doesn't have to agree on every step either. But as long as we agree on what needs to be common, then the magic will happen.
Yeah, we're aligned very closely. We're following you and I were talking about VRCs earlier.
Yeah.
As we were walking around the gardens. We're also aligning with Harvard. I
Yep.
think you're working
Yes,
with
yeah,
them.
we're working it.
And we're not diving in and having a ton of opinions on that because that's really first person. It's more, okay, great. How does Ayra Cards need it?
Yes.
How do we use it? And
Yep.
how do our members leverage it?
Yep.
So it's nice and good. So
Yeah, they all flow into each other.
Cool.
So I'm not, from what I'm seeing, and I genuinely mean this, I'm not seeing any red flags or kind of challenge or issues where you're going in different paths or that you're working against each other. I think you're actually both walking down, and first person project is sprinting ahead on different aspects that will be required by Ayra. And Ayra is sprinting ahead on different parts that will be required.
Drummond and I this week,
projects.
Drummond and I this week, as we published the newest version of the trust, which is Query Protocol. That's trust over IP, but we're probably the biggest contributor to it. We just caught him up on the trust registry side, even though he's one of the editors of that spec. So it's a dance back and forth.
It's a dance. It's a dance.
What questions do you have for me?
How as an implementer ourselves, there are too many standards out there, and there are literally like standards coming up every day of the week. Countries sometimes reinvent the wheel. How do you see the role of Ayra of trying to help, consolidate some of those standards, or at least have a set of standards that, if we can say that we're compliant to, will drive reusability across the industry?
The way we're looking at it right now is an Ayra card, whether it's a business card, an employee badge, some kind of a membership card, which are all different kinds of Ayra cards. That base, we're going to have a very strong opinion on what credential format we're using. What are the interactions? How do I offer you a card? How do you request a card?
Mm-hmm.
How do we share the card?
Yeah.
How do we make sure that the payloads come with the card? Beyond that, we don't care. When we look at the various flavors of credentials, we just have an opinion. You and I have talked about it. It's a sharp-elbowed opinion. It's an answer.
Yeah.
Business people are not looking for yet another credential format that is flavor.
So they're not asking you to buy SDJWTs?
No one said that.
No one's asked.
They just want to share the stuff.
Yeah.
As we move ahead, we see our role as the network grows, is that we will at some point have some more influence and say, listen, here's what's working, here's what's falling short. Here's where SD, selective disclosure, is needed. Here's where ZKPs are needed, as opposed to a kind of cool technology, which unfortunately that's blurred right now. Where are there fundamental things where privacy is being broken because of standard? What our goal is we'll end up with a few. I came out of the geospatial world where there were, even, I don't know if you ever heard of GeoTIFF. There were, I don't know how many flavors of GeoTIFF, and nothing worked together. Nobody benefited except the contractor writing that one standard. We will end up with a power law of some kind of 3 or 4 standards for the credential types. Hopefully not 3 or 4 different communication methods. I think that will consolidate to one. And our goal is to help just make sure things are working, but focusing on the business front. If there's a business problem that can't be solved and is valuable to work on, that we need to modify, then hey, great, we'll lean in. We'll work with ISO, W3C, IETF, DIFF, LFDT, whatever. We'll work with all those. Open Wallet Foundation. We already work with most of them to help them. But that we're not going to, other than market force, we're not going to have too much opinion. So,
good luck with that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. It is, right now, we don't have a lot of what I would call religious level opinions in Ayra. We tend to have more pragmatic. Is I want to get the business thing going because I've been investing for so long. Or I see so much opportunity that the tech format credit is not part of their business problem. Their value prop is what's solving a business problem, not, hey, I have magic credential type X. That's not a differentiator. At least we're not seeing that right now.
And if you were to fast forward, let's say 10 years, you're on stage giving your infamous TED talk.
No way.
What's the one thing that you think Ayra Cards change for the world?
I was going to ask you a question to end this thing, but I'm going to think it is that it wasn't the credentials. It was the communications.
Right.
It is the relationships, and what we do with those relationships is where everything changes. The fact that we use credentials as the thing to start the relationship is critical, and we have to get them started. But I think in 10 years, we'll find that it wasn't the credential at all. It was how do we get the relationships going and use them to build trust. That I think is, it's almost a head fake. We're like, hey, look, credentials. Like, no. It's important. That's the adoption vector.
Yeah.
Once I have the relationship with you, everything's open. So
Very cool.
how about you? What's your TED talk?
My TED talk.
It's a good question.
It's a good question. I have many things. I mean, in some ways, it would really be bringing it back down to taking out a giant. So I think whenever you have hyper consolidation of data, information, identity, particularly into the tech giants, ultimately what it's doing is it's throttling innovation. You don't have, again, I've been part of the internet from the mid-90s, and I've seen anytime we made data more accessible, it drove innovation.
Yep.
What I'm seeing is data getting locked up more and more and more, right? I can't access my own data.
It's a centralization pattern.
It's a centralization. So, I would love to be the one on stage and say, yeah, we killed a giant or two. And we killed them by forcing them to open up their gardens and let people choose. By the way, I don't think they're inherently bad. I just think it's a business model that rewards the wrong behavior right now.
It's the incentives are wrong.
The incentives are wrong.
Yeah, which is why we have this weird governance structure at Ayra, which is commercial and non-commercial. And if we had purely commercial, we know we would do the wrong things.
Yep.
But we have this weird balance. So what you're basically saying is you're quoting Pink Floyd and tear down the walls.
No, basically.
Yeah.
The Rebel or Billy Idol, Rebel.
Yeah. Awesome.
Awesome.
Perfect.
Pleasure, as always.
Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Darrell.